Welcome to my channel, or welcome back if you're returning to it. This is the second of a series of videos on using Google Sheets and Google Apps Script. We're creating a list sorted in order of upcoming birthdays from a Members Club database. In the previous video, we used one method of doing this. We started with an unsorted master sheet, and from the master sheet created another sheet sorted with upcoming birthdays at the top. The method worked, but there were limits to what you could do with it. So in this video we try a different method. This method is more complicated, but it avoids the shortcomings of the other method. It's still not perfect, as we'll see. So in the next video in the series we'll use a script. But at the end of this video I'll explain why we should really do that. The previous method certainly worked. We successfully created a sheet sorted in order of upcoming birthdays. The sorted birthdays were in the column headed Be Next. Note that to make the sorting work, we used the month-day format for the date. The sorting worked so that on the 28th of June, the date on which the sheet was accessed, which is 0628 in month-day format. Birthdays still to happen this year were placed at the top of Be Next, whereas those that had already occurred this year were correctly placed at the end of Be Next. We want to achieve the same using the method that we're going to adopt in this video. Remember, all dates were in month-day format, so that 0108 was the 8th of January, 0202 the 2nd of February, and so on. The sorting worked well enough, but I also wanted to create a days to next birthday column. Unfortunately, because we'd used the text function to convert dates to strings so that we could use the month-day format to make sorting easier, the obvious entry for cell G2, D2 minus E2, i.e. the difference between Be Next and today, or between next birthday and today's date, didn't work. The dates now being strings, we could no longer perform calculations on them, and could no longer subtract one date from another. In this video we'll solve that problem. We won't use strings. We will keep the date based on a number. Actually, in Sheets, it's the number of days since the 1st of January 1900. We will use Sheets date-based functions on the birthday date and on today's date. This will be more complicated than the previous video, but it will solve the problem. But we'll find other problems, especially when we make changes to the master sheet. The birthday sheet is either not changed, or worse really, is completely messed up. This would best be resolved only by using a macro, or better still, a script. Both these will be covered in the next video. Anyway, to get to the main meat of this video, we start, as in the previous video, from this unsorted master sheet. So we'll add a new sheet by clicking on the plus at the bottom left of the screen and rename the sheet Birthdays. We can populate the new sheet by simply copying the first two columns and the fourth from the master sheet and pasting them into the new Birthdays sheet. This works, but the new pasted entries, like Hazelnut's associate status, have become entries in their own right in the birthday sheet and are no longer linked to the master sheet entry. So if we change her status from associate to paid in the master sheet, the birthday sheet entry is not automatically changed. So again as before, we'll create another new sheet called Birthdays Linked. And because we don't want the top row of the master sheet, since it contains only the name of the club, we will link A1 in birthdays to A2 in master, using the formula equals master exclamation mark A2. This is how you link to cells in another worksheet. As before, fill down. The last row in master was A23, and we're not copying the first row across. So shift and down arrow until A22, then Control and D fills down. The filling down works because we're using relative cell addresses. So, cell A1 links from master A2, cell A2 links from master A3, cell A3 links from master A4, and so on. Now fill right. Hold Shift and right arrow, then Control plus R fills right. Again it works because we're using relative addresses, so that A1 in birthdays links to A2 in master, and B1 in birthdays links to B2 in master. Now put the formula equals master exclamation mark D2 into the birthday sheet C1 and fill down again. Any changes to the master sheet will now be reflected here in the birthday sheet. Hazelnut status will now be changed to paid because it is linked to the status in the master sheet. Format the sheet and freeze the first row and column. Formatting would include changing the column width so that nobody overflows. You may not actually need to freeze the first column, but you definitely need to freeze the first row. Otherwise it could end up being sorted later. Now we want to sort this sheet. Just as in the last video, sorting on date of birth is useless. You just end up with the oldest member at the top. We're not sorting on birthdays at all. The problem is the year. We really need to get rid of the year. Or we could make the dates this year, or next year, making that depend on when the next birthday is. Anyway, to do any of this, we need to think about dates. In Google Sheets, just like in Excel, you can construct a date from the formula equals date, bracket, year, month, day, close bracket. So, for example, equals date, bracket, 1954, 08, 13, close bracket, will give you the date of the 13th of August, 1954. If it doesn't work, or doesn't seem to work, make sure that the cell is formatted for a date in the appropriate format. And also note that all of the functions used here in this video are case insensitive. It doesn't matter whether they're lowercase or uppercase. That's how to construct a date, but equally you can take a date apart. So, the function equals year on a date gives you the year for that date. Equals month on a date gives you the month for that date, and equals day on a date gives you the day for that date. The other function you need to be aware of is today or equals today, then open and close brackets. That gives you today's date. And you can also use the year, month and day functions on that as well. We'll make use of all of these in this video. Now, to explain things simply, I'm going to do things bit by bit. I'll create columns that just do one thing. Otherwise, I think it would be difficult to follow. So I'm going to build up the spreadsheet slowly and carefully and in a pedestrian fashion. But later on we're going to tidy the spreadsheet up and get rid of all these redundant columns. At this point we're going to use nested functions. In other words, functions inside functions. Both in Sheets and indeed in Excel as well, these are an extremely useful concept. We'll end up with just the columns we need and nothing else. Anyway, C2 contains a date of birth, which is of course a date. So we can perform the month function on it so that equals month C2 will be the month, and equals day C2 will be the day of the date of birth. We want to keep the birth month. So let's have a column which we can call BM with equal month C2 in the top cell. Fill down, then another column which we can call BDay with day C2 in the top cell. As before with the filling down, D2 will be month C2, but D3 will be month C3, D4 will be month C4, and so on. So the column will contain all the months of all the birthdays in column C. Next, we'll fill down column E and put today's date in the top cell in column F. Using the today open and close bracket construct, and noting that it is case insensitive, and that we access the sheet on the 26th of June 2022. Since F2 is a date, well, today's date, year F2 gives us the year of today, in other words, the current year. We need this, so fill down on column F and enter equals year F2 into cell G2. Fill down column G. It's not essential to fill down either columns F or G, but it will be helpful later. Then, using the date, year, month, day function, equals date, G2, D2, E2 gives us the birthday this year. G2 being the year, D2 the month, and E2 the day. Let's fill down on this column. Sorting on this column gives birthdays this year in date order. January at the top, then February, and so on, regardless of the year of birth. This is not what we eventually want, though, because birthdays earlier this year have already happened and will not recur until 2023. But before we solve this problem, let's tidy up our sheet a little and get rid of unnecessary columns. Remember our formula in H2 equals date, G2, D2, E2, but G2 was year F2 and F2 was today, today's date. So G2 could be rewritten equals year today, and pay heed to the brackets. Substituting in this way is quite acceptable in Sheets, as indeed it is in Excel. D2 was month C2, and E2 was day C2, note the brackets. So we can substitute all of these into the formula for H2. Remember that the formula for H2 was equals date, G2, D2, E2. So after substitution, this is what it becomes, and I have set it out in the description below the video. Filling down gives us the equivalent lower cells. As I say, the final formula for H2 is set out in the description. Note that this revised formula for H2 refers only to cell C2, so we can safely delete columns D, E and F. Actually, I want to refer to the Today column later, but let's anyway delete what were D and E. I could also have deleted the This Year column, now column E. I had overlooked that. Remember though, BD 2022 sorted does not give us what we want. We want next birthdays, not January birthdays, at the top. So let's set up a birthdays 2023 column, using the construct that you can see here, which in effect just adds 1 to the year, and which is again set out in the description. We will fill down on this column, giving us birthdays next year. Now, finally, we can create a next birthdays column, noting, incidentally, that we have now deleted the This Year column, which, like the other columns we had previously deleted, is no longer necessary. The next birthday column will be one we can usefully sort on. It will be based on column F if the birthday has already passed, i.e. if today's date is greater than or later than the date in column E. Otherwise we use column E, because the birthday has still to come. We use the construct if D2 is greater than E2, F2, E2, being very careful about the brackets and the commas. In other words, use F2 if the condition is satisfied, E2 otherwise. The condition being that the birthday has already passed this year. Fill down on the next birthday column, noting that birthdays from earlier in the year will not recur until next year, 2023. Sort on the new column and we've done it. Birthdays that will not recur until 2023 are correctly placed at the bottom of the new column. What's more, it's very easy to set up a days to next birthday column, which defeated us, you may remember, in the previous video. The formula G2 minus today, open and close brackets, being the number of days to a member's next birthday, we can easily see if there are any imminent birthdays. Remember that we couldn't do this using the method in the last video. Let's fill down to complete the table. 2023 next birthdays being correctly placed at the bottom. I could stop there, we have achieved our objective. But columns D, E and F were there only as an aid to explanation. Let's tidy up by getting rid of them. The process is basically the same as we used before. The formula in G2 is, if D2 is greater than E2, F2, E2, being careful about the commas and the brackets. But D2 is today, open and close brackets. E2 is as shown here and also in the description. And F2 is shown here and also in the description. We can substitute all of these into G2, giving this rather lengthy formula, which is also in the description. I'll just wait a few seconds on this page before carrying on. What is important to notice is the only cell referenced is C2. And filling down, all cells in G refer only to their sister cell in C. H2 references only G2, which itself references C. So we can delete D, E and F, since these columns are no longer referenced by any other cell. As before, I want to keep D for now, to return to later in the video. Something else that I want to return to is that Victoria Bridge is at the top with 3 days to go. But anyway, deleting the old E and F gives us this, our final version of the sheet. But oh no, I have just realised that I miscopied Victoria Bridge's birthday from my paper. It's not the 29th, but the 26th of June. Changing it on the master sheet is immediately reflected in birthdays, and days to birthday are changed to 0 automatically. But what happens when we return the next day? Victoria Bridge is still at the top, though her birthday has now passed. At the very least, we will need to resort this sheet. That's not the only problem. Let's suppose now that we have a new member. Let's add Barry White to the master sheet. Above Johnny Come Lately. This moves Johnny Come Lately from row 10 to 11. The link in the birthday sheet reflects this. But Barry White is not added to the birthdays sheet. The problem is that there is no link anywhere to the new master sheet row. In any case, we have only provided for 22 rows. So Barry does not get inserted into the birthdays sheet. Suppose next Victoria Bridge decides to leave the club. Deleting row 9 of the master sheet moves the next rows up. Victoria has gone from the master sheet, but her row has not been deleted from the birthdays sheet. We just get error messages. So adding or deleting members is a real problem. Finally, let's resort the master sheet. On the DOB column, oldest members are now at the top. Unfortunately, the birthday sheet links have now been completely disrupted. The sheet is no longer properly sorted. At the very least, we must resort it. which also puts Victoria Bridge into her now proper place at the bottom of the sheet. Obviously we didn't go through with deleting her earlier. So you can see that though the sorting has worked fine, work has still to be done when the master sheet is changed. Sometimes it is no more than resorting, but adding and deleting members really requires reconstitution of the birthday sheet. We need to be able to make these amendments automatically. That's what we will do in the next video, where we will look at a macro and also at a script. We will find that the script will work better. Thank you very much for watching. If you found this video helpful and would like to see similar videos, please subscribe to my channel so that you can be informed of future videos as soon as they are posted on YouTube.